Somewhere around 1985, a woman in a department store picked up a small plastic gadget off a shelf, turned it over twice, and put it in her cart without ever figuring out what it did. She was not alone. Millions of American households spent that entire decade filling drawers, countertops, and cabinets with objects that looked like they solved a problem, except the problem never existed in the first place. Number 14 on this list was sold in every major store in the country, and not a single person who bought it could explain what it actually did. And then there is number 41, which somehow made it into millions of kitchens despite being completely useless the moment you took it out of the box. So hit subscribe if you have not already, because here are 60 funny household items from the 1980s that made no sense. Vertical blinds could be found on nearly every sliding glass door in America throughout the 1980s, and not one set ever worked properly. Long plastic slats hanging from a track, opening and closing with a pull chain or a wand. That was the concept. The execution was a disaster. At least one slat was always crooked. The track jammed constantly. Walking through meant getting slapped by rigid plastic strips that clattered together like a percussion instrument designed by someone who hated music. They collected dust in the track mechanism with an efficiency that suggested it was their actual purpose. Opening them fully required a technique nobody could agree on. Some pulled the chain, some used the wand, some just shoved the slats aside by hand, bending several permanently. Replacement slats never matched because the plastic yellowed at different rates depending on sun exposure. By the mid-90s, manufacturers like Levolor were pushing horizontal mini blinds as the upgrade, but the verticals held on in rental apartments for another full decade. Mayonnaise jars as flower vases were another little touch of 1970s frugality. Once emptied, the glass jars were rinsed and filled with water, then placed in the center of the dining table with a bouquet of wildflowers or daisies. To a child, it looked just as beautiful as a vase from the store. Parents saw no need to spend extra money on fancy containers when a jar did the job perfectly well. Sometimes kids peeled the labels off the jars, leaving sticky glue that never fully came off. Others decorated them with stickers or crayon marks, turning them into personal masterpieces. No matter how they looked, those jars always held pride of place on the table, proving beauty did not need a price tag. A handful of flowers from the yard, tucked into a mayonnaise jar, turned even the simplest supper into something special. Some jars were painted or wrapped in ribbons to dress them up for Sunday dinners or birthdays. Others were left plain, standing proudly as a reminder that beauty could be made from anything at hand. Guests smiled politely, but no one laughed, because almost everyone had seen a mayonnaise jar holding flowers in their lifetime. In homes where every penny mattered, jars became decoration, and practicality blended seamlessly with pride. Recalled aluminum wiring connectors were once hailed as the budget-friendly alternative during the wiring shortages of the 1970s, and countless new homes relied on them. Builders loved them because they were cheap, available, and easy to install, and homeowners loved them because nobody complained about a lower electrical bill. But the flaws were already quietly forming in the walls where nobody could see them. Aluminum expanded and contracted far more than copper, and over time these movements loosened the connections that held everything together. A loose electrical connection is not a small problem. It sparks. It overheats. It quietly melts the surrounding material until one night the wall bursts into flames with no warning. Families across the country were stunned when investigators pointed to the same cheap connectors again and again as the hidden culprit. House fires that seemed accidental were suddenly part of a much bigger pattern. When the recalls finally came, they came with urgency, because by then, too many homes had already paid the price. It is unsettling to think that something so small, something meant to keep the lights on, could bring an entire house down. Light-up touch lamps were pure magic to anyone who grew up in the 1980s. You didn't need a switch, just a fingertip. With a single touch, the lamp would glow brighter, shimmering off metallic shades that looked straight out of a science fiction movie. Kids couldn't resist tapping them over and over, fascinated by their strange power. Each touch felt like a tiny spark of control, like holding lightning in your hands. The gentle hum and glowing metal made even the darkest bedroom feel like a space station. They made even bedtime feel like a science experiment, a soft hum, a gentle flash, and a sense of wonder that never quite faded. For many kids, it was their first brush with technology that actually listened to them. They lit bedrooms and living rooms alike, humming softly as though alive. There was something futuristic and comforting about them, a small taste of wonder in everyday life. For many, those lamps symbolized modern living, the future, right there on your nightstand. Today, their warm glow feels like a portal back to the past, when technology still amazed us in the simplest ways. Formaldehyde-treated plywood kitchen cabinets lined the walls of countless homes in the 1980s, their smooth surfaces and affordable prices making them popular for families upgrading cooking spaces. The glue holding wood layers together contained formaldehyde resins that cured slowly over months, releasing invisible gas into kitchens where families spent hours each day. People cooked meals, ate breakfast, and helped children with homework while breathing fumes they could not smell at low concentrations. Some families noticed headaches, irritated eyes, or persistent coughs without connecting symptoms to their new cabinets. The formaldehyde levels were highest when cabinets were new, but off-gassing continued for years, especially in warm kitchens where windows stayed closed. When researchers published findings linking chronic exposure to respiratory illness and cancer risks, the construction industry faced immediate pressure. Regulators set strict limits on formaldehyde emissions, forcing manufacturers to reformulate adhesives entirely. Families who had proudly remodeled their kitchens wondered what they had been breathing. Those cabinets became symbols of how progress can poison the spaces meant to nourish us. If you climbed into an attic in the 1980s and saw loose, grayish-brown pebbles spread between the joists, you were looking at vermiculite insulation. About 70% of all vermiculite sold in the United States came from a single mine near Libby, Montana, operated by the W.R. Grace Company. That mine was contaminated with tremolite asbestos. Sold under the brand name Zonolite, the insulation went into an estimated 35 million American attics. Homeowners poured it by the bag with no protective equipment, sending clouds of dust and invisible fibers into the air. Grace knew about the contamination for years and suppressed the information. Hundreds of Libby residents developed asbestos-related diseases. In 2002, the EPA declared the town a Superfund site, but the insulation remains in millions of attics across the country, undisturbed and unremoved. Macrame was everywhere in the 1970s. From wall art to plant holders, it was the ultimate expression of homemade beauty and bohemian life. Then came macrame hanging lamps, the perfect marriage of craft and function. Warm, textured, handmade, they turned living rooms into cozy sanctuaries. But as it turned out, beauty and fire rarely mix well. The woven cords, often made from cotton or jute, dangled dangerously close to incandescent bulbs that burned hot enough to ignite them in seconds. Families admired their glow, unaware that the same lamp could go up in flames at the flick of a switch. Fire departments quietly began issuing warnings, but by then macrame had already woven its way into millions of homes. The ads called them a touch of natural warmth, but that warmth sometimes became all too literal. The danger was poetic in its irony. Something hand-woven with care could end up destroying what it was meant to decorate. Even now, vintage collectors love their retro charm, but they do so with caution, knowing that one of the 1970s most iconic designs doubled as an accidental fire trap. It is the perfect example of a time when style burned brighter than safety. At some point, someone decided mirrors did not belong on just the walls of dance studios. They belonged in your living room too. Mirrored walls were supposed to open up small spaces and reflect natural light. What they actually did was double your clutter, amplify fingerprints, and make your guests deeply uncomfortable. People would walk past their own reflections during dinner, trying not to make eye contact with themselves. The idea was chic. The reality was cold, clinical, and impossible to keep clean. What was meant to make your room look bigger ended up making it look busier, messier, and 10 times more high maintenance. And once one mirror cracked or peeled, the illusion of glamour shattered instantly. Every smudge, every streak, every greasy fingerprint stood out like graffiti. If you tried to hang art on them, you ended up with a framing nightmare. And if one cracked, it did not just ruin the wall, it shattered the illusion entirely. Mirrored walls were the visual equivalent of trying too hard, and as it turns out, they were not even the most fragile design feature of the decade. That title belonged to something hiding right above your head. Wood paneling in every room was one of the most defining home trends of the 1970s. From living rooms to dens to basements, it covered walls in warm, dark tones that made spaces feel cozy, sometimes too cozy. The panels could be real wood or faux with that distinctive vertical groove pattern. Many families took pride in polishing and maintaining the panels, so they would always have that rich sheen. Some even hung framed art directly onto the paneling, the warm tones acting like a built-in backdrop. The faint woody smell it gave off could make the whole room feel like a rustic cabin retreat. In the right light, it could look rich and inviting. In the wrong light, it felt like the inside of a log cabin you could not escape. People loved how easy it was to install, instantly transforming plain drywall into something finished. It also hid imperfections and gave rooms that rustic meets modern vibe so many homeowners craved. Basements in particular seemed incomplete without it, paired with low-slung sofas and a massive console television. Sure, it darkened the space a bit, but it was worth it for the look. Even today, walking into a fully paneled room instantly transports you back to a 1970s family gathering. Carbon tetrachloride fire extinguishers were considered the most advanced household safety tool available, and their reputation was earned through sheer effectiveness. When flames erupted, you released a liquid that smothered fire faster than water, powder, or foam ever could. Scientists today recognize the smothering mechanism as remarkably efficient because carbon tetrachloride displaced oxygen so completely that flames died almost instantly. Grandparents kept these extinguishers under sinks and near stoves, believing they held the best protection available. The speed was what people loved, watching a dangerous flare-up vanish in seconds with a single burst. But nobody understood what happened when that liquid hit extreme heat. It transformed into phosgene gas, a substance so toxic it was used as a chemical weapon in earlier wars. Families who rushed to extinguish kitchen fires inhaled something far deadlier than the flames, unaware that each breath carried a hidden threat. When regulators connected the dots, these extinguishers were replaced with safer alternatives that worked slower but did not poison the people they protected. The engineering was brilliant, the chemistry lethal. PCB containing window caulking was applied around frames in homes throughout the 1970s because it stayed flexible, sealed tightly, and lasted far longer than older compounds. Contractors squeezed it into every gap, trusting it would keep drafts out and energy bills down. Homeowners appreciated how well it worked, never questioning what was inside. But polychlorinated biphenyls, the chemicals that gave caulking its durability, turned out to be profoundly dangerous. PCBs do not break down easily. They seep into surrounding materials, drift into the air as caulking ages, and accumulate in human tissue over time. Researchers linked long-term exposure to cancer, immune system damage, and developmental problems in children. When investigators tested older buildings, they found contamination spreading far beyond window frames into walls, flooring, and soil outside. Regulators classified PCB caulking as toxic waste, requiring professional removal teams in full protective gear. Families who felt proud of their sealed homes realized the material protecting them from cold was quietly poisoning them for years. Today, any renovation of an older building begins with testing for this invisible hazard. Glass butter churns were once the pride of every 1940s kitchen. These hand-cranked wonders turned cream into golden butter, all powered by elbow grease and patience. Housewives would pour in cream, attach the handle, and churn until their arms ached. The rhythmic sound of the paddles striking glass filled homes across rural America. The process was a family affair. Children fought for turns, and everyone cheered when the butter finally thickened and turned golden. Some people added a pinch of salt or even a splash of milk to make it smoother, perfecting their own signature recipe. It wasn't just cooking, it was ritual, part science and part love. Children often took turns spinning the handle, their laughter mixing with the creak of the churn as they waited for the magic to happen. The moment the butter began to separate from the buttermilk felt like a small miracle, a tangible reward for hard work. Fresh butter spread across warm bread wasn't just food, it was comfort, earned and savored. Though electric mixers soon replaced these churns, the glass jars remained treasured relics, clear reminders of a time when patience was part of every recipe. If you never knew why good venting systems are literal lifesavers, let carbon monoxide be a lesson. Most homes did suffer from the aforementioned issue of bad ventilation, and even throughout the 1990s to 2005 annually, at least 439 people died from carbon monoxide intoxication. Nationwide, throughout homes that were built in the 1900s, similarly hundreds or even thousands of people suffered from the harmful substance. Carbon monoxide is also dangerously easy to produce because it comes from the burning of any natural fuel. Wood, charcoal, or natural gas, and even kerosene can produce it if it is not properly oxidized. It is extremely normal as a result nowadays for homes to prioritize ventilation so that any sort of burning that goes on does not produce harsh levels of CO. Long-term exposure to the substance also reduced your blood's ability to carry oxygen, which worsened or caused breathing problems in people. Never take your lungs for granted, folks. Bless this house. You have probably seen it stitched in blue, maybe green, with two little doves perched under a roof. It hung in the hallway, in the kitchen, or right above the mantel, whispering a kind of everyday prayer without ever making a sound. Embroidered samplers like these were not just decoration. They were a kind of gentle anchor. Most were homemade, pulled together by nimble fingers with embroidery hoops and spools of thread that sat on laps while the television buzzed in the background. If they were not made by someone in the family, they were gifted with a handwritten card and a smile that said, "I thought of you." Sometimes they came framed in wood, sometimes just pinned up on the wall with thumbtacks. No one minded. They were supposed to be humble. That was the whole point. Bless this house was more than a phrase. It was a reflection of what mattered: family, warmth, safety. It was one of the few things you could count on always being there, no matter how much moved or changed. But right next to those stitched words, maybe even underneath them, you would probably find a stack of something even heavier than it looked. The clapper was supposed to be the future of home automation. Introduced in 1985 by a California businessman named Joseph Padot, this sound-activated switch plugged into any wall outlet and promised hands-free control of your lamps and appliances. 2 claps turned on the first device, 3 claps activated the second. The jingle, clap on, clap off, burrowed into the national consciousness and never left. The problem was that the clapper could not tell the difference between a deliberate hand clap and a dog barking, a door slamming, or a particularly dramatic moment on the television. Lights flickered during action movies. Fans started spinning when someone laughed too hard. The technology that was supposed to eliminate the walk to the light switch created a new problem: living in fear of making any sudden noise after bedtime. Padot sold more than 7 million units before selling the company in 2018. Plastic milk jugs as water pitchers were another example of poor families making do. When the jug was emptied, it was rinsed out and refilled with tap water, then placed in the fridge to chill. The wide spout made pouring easy, and the handle was already built in. Families did not see any reason to buy fancy pitchers when the jug worked just fine. Sometimes the edges yellowed from repeated use, but nobody cared as long as it held cold water. Kids often chewed on the plastic spout absent-mindedly, leaving it dented and rough. Guests never batted an eye. They expected to be served water or Kool-Aid straight from a milk jug. Some people even cut the tops off to turn them into scoops for pet food, birdseed, or flour. Kids carried them to ball games filled with homemade Kool-Aid, each jug sweating in the summer heat. The same plastic container that once delivered milk became a workhorse of daily life, proving that usefulness always beat out looks. Guests never expected a glass pitcher. They expected a milk jug, frosty and ready, because that was what everyone used. It was practical, humble, and unforgettable. Radium dial alarm clocks were once the pride of a bedside table, glowing softly in that unmistakable green that felt almost magical in the dim room of a 1970s home. People would brag about how they could read the hands in total darkness, never realizing that the glow came from radioactive paint brushed on by workers who were never warned of its dangers. These clocks sat beside children's beds, tucked on kitchen counters, packed into travel bags, and nobody questioned a thing because the glow felt futuristic, almost luxurious, like owning a tiny piece of science fiction. What people did not know was that the very paint that made the numbers visible at night was slowly releasing radiation into the air and into their hands every single time they touched it. As medical reports piled up and the truth about exposure became harder to dismiss, the glow that once felt comforting turned chilling. Looking back, it is frightening how many homes trusted these clocks without hesitation, unaware that a small, harmless object could hold such a serious secret. Plastic floor runners were the ultimate paradox of 1970s homekeeping, meant to protect but impossible to love. Clear and ridged, they stretched across shag carpets like invisible armor, guarding every inch from dirt and footprints. They squeaked under socks, jabbed at bare feet, and somehow never stayed flat. Every child learned the art of hopping from carpet to carpet, avoiding the painful plastic path of doom. The runners trapped air bubbles underneath, making odd squishing noises with every step. They curled at the edges and collected crumbs that no vacuum could reach. And still, every parent swore they were saving the carpet from ruin, as if the floor itself were a family treasure. The runners were supposed to preserve beauty, but all they really preserved were memories of discomfort. And yet, they became as familiar as the furniture itself. A sign that someone cared, maybe a little too much. Still, every parent swore by them, convinced that no guest should ever touch the sacred carpet underneath. They were a mark of pride, proof that a home was spotless, even if it didn't feel that way. Walking across one barefoot was a test of endurance. Surviving it was a childhood rite of passage. Today, they're remembered with both laughter and pain, a relic of when protection meant never actually feeling at home. Asbestos-backed vinyl floor tiles covered kitchens, bathrooms, and basements in countless 1980s homes, their durability and affordability making them the go-to choice for practical families. The tiles came in cheerful patterns that brightened rooms, and they resisted water, stains, and heavy foot traffic better than almost anything available. Hidden beneath the colorful surface was a layer of asbestos backing that gave tiles their famous strength. Families walked across these floors barefoot, mopped them weekly, and never imagined the material underfoot could be dangerous. The asbestos remained stable as long as tiles stayed intact, but scratching, cracking, or removal released microscopic fibers into the air. Homeowners who pulled up old flooring themselves often did so without masks, inhaling clouds of invisible particles. When health risks of asbestos became undeniable, regulations required professional abatement and safe disposal. Many families discovered their floors were hazardous only when preparing to sell or remodel their homes. The cheerful tiles that seemed so practical now required expensive removal procedures. They remain a stark reminder that danger sometimes lies directly beneath our feet. The pink packets of Sweet and Low sitting on every diner table and kitchen counter in the 1980s carried a small but unmistakable warning. This product contains saccharin, which has been determined to cause cancer in laboratory animals. People read it, shrugged, and stirred the powder into their coffee anyway. The warning had been mandated by Congress since 1977 after studies linked saccharin to bladder tumors in rats. For over 2 decades, Americans consumed a product their own government labeled as a potential carcinogen, because the alternative was sugar and the diet industry was booming. Cumberland Packing Corporation, the maker of Sweet and Low, fought the label for years. It was not removed until the year 2000, when newer research suggested the rat studies were not directly applicable to humans. For the entire 1980s, that cancer warning sat right on the table next to the salt and pepper, and almost nobody stopped using it. Few inventions felt more modern than non-stick cookware. Teflon promised freedom from scrubbing, stuck eggs, and greasy messes. Housewives and young couples alike embraced it as a symbol of convenience and progress. It was advertised as the perfect marriage of science and home life, sleek, spotless, and futuristic. The shine of those silver pans reflected an entire generation's faith in technology. But inside that slick surface lurked a chemical secret that no one could pronounce, much less understand. But what they did not know was that overheating a Teflon pan, something as simple as forgetting it on the stove, could release invisible toxic fumes. Birds dropped from their perches, families complained of dizziness and coughing. Manufacturers brushed it off, calling it harmless. Yet behind closed doors, scientists knew those fumes came from chemicals that could cause flu-like symptoms in humans and death in pets. The same coating that made cooking easier also made breathing more dangerous. Teflon was progress, but at a price no one could see. Looking back, it is unsettling how something designed to make life cleaner ended up polluting the very air of the American kitchen. The promise of modular furniture was simple: flexibility, creativity, and smart design for small spaces. What we got instead was a collection of flimsy particle board pieces that wobbled with every move. These were the stackable shelves, folding tables, and interchangeable couch systems that dominated catalogs in the 1970s. And on paper, they made sense. Custom configurations, easy to rearrange, and light enough to move around by yourself. But there was a reason they were light. They were also fragile. The locking mechanisms broke, the cheap finishes peeled, and what looked cool in the store rarely held up under the daily wear of real life. Coffee tables would sag in the middle. Bookshelves leaned like tired soldiers. Even the stylish-looking modular couches were uncomfortable and awkward to clean. Some homeowners embraced the idea at first, charmed by the sense of innovation. But over time, the frustration set in. The dream of flexible living turned into a house full of disposable furniture. And if the modular design failed to impress, the next status symbol at least came with its own built-in glamour, until nobody wanted it anymore. Built-in stereo consoles were the entertainment epicenters of many 1970s living rooms. These were not small, portable devices. They were massive pieces of furniture, often as long as a sofa and finished in dark wood veneer. The console housed a record player, AM/FM radio, and sometimes an 8-track tape deck, all tucked behind hinged panels. Opening one up felt almost ceremonial, as if you were about to unveil something important. The gentle crackle as the needle touched the vinyl was part of the atmosphere, a sound that signaled the start of an evening at home. Friends would sometimes gather just to flip through your record sleeves, treating the collection like a treasure trove. The top would lift to reveal the controls, and the speakers were built right into the sides, covered with decorative fabric grills. Families would gather around to put on a new album, adjusting the bass and treble knobs like they were operating high-end studio equipment. The console often doubled as a display surface, topped with framed family photos, a vase of flowers, or maybe a decorative ashtray. It was as much a visual statement as a functional device, a sign that you took your music seriously. Guests could not help but peek inside, curious to see the record collection neatly stored underneath. In an era before digital playlists, this was how you shared music, dropping the needle and letting the sound fill the entire house. Beaded phosphate-heavy laundry detergents were the champions of clean clothes in the 1970s, delivering results modern eco-friendly formulas have never matched. Chemists acknowledged that phosphates were extraordinarily effective at softening hard water, suspending dirt, and preventing it from redepositing onto fabric. Families poured these detergents into every load, marveling at whites that came out brighter and stains that vanished without pre-treatment. The science was elegant, a single additive solving multiple cleaning challenges at once. People trusted their routine completely, never imagining every cycle sent those chemicals into rivers and lakes. Phosphates acted like fertilizer for algae. triggering massive blooms that choked waterways, depleted oxygen, and devastated aquatic life. Entire ecosystems collapsed while families unknowingly contributed load after load. When environmental agencies linked the damage to detergent runoff, bans arrived swiftly. Reformulated versions work adequately, but anyone who remembers how effortlessly phosphate formulas handled tough loads knows the cleaning power was never fully replaced. It is one of those cases where the best product caused damage far beyond the home. Hexachlorophene antibacterial soap was marketed as the ultimate protection against germs in the 1970s, sold in pharmacies and grocery stores as something every family needed. Parents used it on children, hospitals used it on newborns, and households kept it beside every sink as a daily defense against illness. The soap promised cleanliness beyond anything ordinary products could deliver, and families trusted that promise completely. But hexachlorophene absorbed through skin far more easily than anyone realized, especially in infants whose systems could not handle the chemical load. Reports surfaced of babies developing brain damage after repeated baths with products containing the compound. The connection was devastating. Something meant to protect the most vulnerable was causing irreversible harm. Regulators moved quickly once evidence became clear, banning hexachlorophene from over-the-counter products and restricting its use to prescription settings. Families who had scrubbed their children with this soap every day were horrified to learn what they had done. It remains one of the most painful examples of how a product marketed as safe can carry consequences no parent imagined. CF's Victory Garden seed kits were one of the government's most ingenious wartime ideas. With rations tightening, families were urged to grow their own and ease the burden on the food supply. Each kit came with envelopes of vegetable seeds, beans, carrots, peas, lettuce, along with simple instructions for planting and harvesting. Children would help dig the soil behind homes, while neighbors shared advice and traded extra seeds over fences. Some families grew enough food to feed not just themselves, but entire neighborhoods, turning backyards into tiny farms. Victory gardens weren't just practical. They were emotional medicine, a way to fight back against fear with dirt under your fingernails. Rows of lettuce and tomatoes became symbols of victory just as much as flags and medals. These gardens became a unifying force across cities and farms alike, feeding communities both literally and emotionally. In backyards, schoolyards, and even city rooftops, little patches of green became symbols of pride and patriotism. Posters declared, "Plant a victory garden. Your vegetables fight for freedom." And millions took the message to heart. The modest seed kit gave ordinary people the power to make a difference one tomato at a time. Today, they remind us that survival and solidarity can bloom from the same handful of soil. Speaking of old homes and toppings, let's talk about their sides as well, which were often adorned with single-pane windows. Now, these were a hot choice both because of the look and for their properties at keeping heat, and many builders thought they were the ideal size for most American rooms in the early 60s to 70s. Single-pane windows would also be much more lightweight than alternatives, so the transportation and installation was always easier. Plus, they came much cheaper than any other option on the market, around a flat 20% actually. Being easy to repair just about tied the bow on a pretty package that made these a hard-to-beat choice for interior design in the 20th century. Unfortunately, what they had in being cost-effective, they sorely lacked in being as proficient with energy consumption. Single-pane windows struggled to keep a home cooler in summers and warmer in winters, and as a result, homes had higher bills. Most caught onto the pattern and started opening their minds to other ideas, even if they were not as good-looking. You did not need a dryer to get that fresh linen scent. Just a little sunshine, a backyard, and a sturdy clothesline. It is hard to describe the rhythm of laundry day without sounding like you are writing a lullaby. But that is exactly what it felt like. Quiet, measured, satisfying. Wooden clothespins clipped with a snap, each one holding up shirts, socks, and pillowcases like tiny victories in the wind. You would walk the line, pin by pin, with a wicker basket at your hip and maybe a little radio playing in the distance. And when the breeze came through, the sheets danced like they were performing just for you. Even kids found joy in ducking under the hanging clothes, running through like it was a maze built just for them. Sure, a clothesline was practical. It saved on electricity, and it was good for the planet before anyone talked about being green. But more than that, it made home feel alive. You could literally see your day's work swaying in the wind. And once everything came back inside, warm from the sun, it was folded into drawers that held something just as timeless and quietly beautiful. Delicate little treasures made of a strange kind of cloudy white glass. Builders in the 1980s sprayed a bumpy textured coating onto ceilings because it was cheap, fast, and hid every imperfection in the drywall underneath. They called it popcorn ceiling, though cottage cheese ceiling was equally popular as a name for something that looked like the surface of the moon had been glued overhead. The texture absorbed sound, which builders marketed as a feature. It also absorbed cigarette smoke, cooking grease, and dust, which nobody mentioned. Touching it caused small white chunks to break off and fall into your eyes, your hair, or your dinner. Painting over it was nearly impossible without knocking pieces loose. Removing it meant scrapers, plastic sheeting, and the kind of language you did not want your kids to hear. Homes built before 1980 often contained asbestos in the popcorn mixture, turning a cosmetic nuisance into a health hazard requiring professional abatement. Millions of American homes still have them, and millions of homeowners are still pretending not to notice. Plastic butter tubs as food storage were as common in poor households of the 1970s as Tupperware is today. Every fridge was stacked high with yellow-lidded tubs, none of which actually held butter anymore. They became the universal container for leftovers, soups, or whatever scraps needed saving. A child might open the refrigerator expecting margarine, only to find beans, spaghetti, or stew waiting inside. The tubs were cheap, plentiful, and virtually indestructible, which made them perfect for families who needed every penny to stretch. Mothers rinsed them out carefully, stacked them in cupboards, and reused them endlessly. Even when the print on the lid wore away, the tub still had value, sometimes lasting for years before finally cracking. They were also taken to picnics and potlucks, filled with potato salad or coleslaw, and no one thought twice about it. If you showed up with a butter tub, everyone knew exactly what was inside: thrift, care, and a little bit of pride in making do. They may look cheap by today's standards, but back then, they were a quiet symbol of resourcefulness. Everyone had them, everyone used them, and nobody wasted money on buying extra storage when the butter tub was already sitting there for free. Microwave oven models without radiation shielding were the wild frontier of new technology in the 1970s. Families were mesmerized by the idea of heating food in seconds, and microwaves became a symbol of progress and modern living. But early units were imperfect, rushed to market before the science was fully understood. Some leaked microwave energy through gaps in the door seal or thin shielding, and people reported headaches, dizziness, and strange tingling sensations when standing too close. Parents began noticing pets acting oddly near the machines, and technicians documented power leaks far above safe limits. Regulators stepped in fast once the danger became impossible to ignore. New standards forced manufacturers to redesign the doors, seals, and internal shielding, making the earlier models illegal to sell. It is unsettling to think how many families treated these early microwaves like harmless appliances, unaware that standing in the wrong spot could expose them to invisible energy no one yet understood. Wooden salad bowls and tongs weren't just for salads. They were symbols of hospitality. Every 1970s dinner party had one in the center of the table, piled high with iceberg lettuce and drenched in tangy dressing. Their rich wood grain gleamed under the glow of amber lights, the scent of oil and vinegar mingling with laughter and conversation. Every scrape of the tongs echoed across the table, a soundtrack to family stories and second helpings. The bowls soaked in flavor over the years: a little garlic, a touch of vinegar, a trace of countless dinners. They were polished and re-oiled like heirlooms, treasured not for beauty but for the meals they witnessed. The tongs clacked together like punctuation marks in conversations that lasted late into the night. The bowls absorbed years of flavor, a little olive oil and memory in every groove. Even when they dulled with time, no one ever threw them out. They aged the same way people did, with character. People treated them like fine china, even though they were often bought at the local department store. Families polished them carefully, passing them down like treasures. To serve salad from one was to serve warmth and welcome. These bowls captured the spirit of togetherness, the kind that lingered long after dinner was done. Chlordane-soaked termite barriers were installed beneath foundations throughout the 1980s as the ultimate defense against wood-destroying insects. Pest control companies promised decades of protection, saturating soil with chemicals so persistent that termites would never tunnel through. Homeowners trusted these invisible shields completely, believing their investment would keep structural damage at bay forever. What nobody explained was that chlordane does not simply stay underground. It migrates slowly upward through cracks in concrete, through gaps around pipes, and through air circulating beneath floors. Families lived above these chemical pools for years, breathing vapors that accumulated inside tightly sealed houses designed to conserve energy. Children played on carpets directly over treated soil, and basements carried faint chemical odors people dismissed as normal. When researchers linked chlordane exposure to neurological damage and cancer risks, regulators banned it entirely for residential use. Homeowners were left wondering what had been seeping into their homes for years. Today, chlordane barriers remain troubling examples of how protection can turn into contamination without anyone noticing. The kitchen floor you walked across barefoot every morning may have been made of asbestos. Standard 9 by 9-inch vinyl floor tiles produced through the 1970s routinely contained chrysotile asbestos mixed into the vinyl for durability and fire resistance. Some tiles held as much as 70% asbestos by weight. The black mastic adhesive used to glue them down often contained it as well. As long as the tiles stayed intact, the fibers remained locked inside. But tiles crack, chip, and wear down, and anyone who scraped up old flooring during a renovation sent asbestos fibers directly into the air of their home. Millions of these tiles were still in place throughout the 1980s, and millions more remain in older homes today. No federal law has ever required their removal. Official guidance was simply to leave them alone, cover them over, and hope they held together. If you were a kid in the early 1970s, you probably remember the sound of clackers, the rhythmic click of two acrylic balls smashing together on a string. They were mesmerizing, addictive, and impossible to put down. Every playground echoed with that familiar clack, clack, clack of triumph. But fun quickly turned to fear when kids started showing up with bruises, cuts, and even eye injuries. The acrylic balls could shatter mid-swing, exploding into shards sharp enough to draw blood. Children compared the loudest clack to a badge of honor, competing to see who could swing them the fastest. But the harder they swung, the greater the danger. Tiny shards flew like shrapnel, sometimes slicing faces and arms. Parents called them toys, but in motion, they looked and sounded more like weapons. Parents panicked. Schools banned them. Yet for a brief moment, clackers were everywhere. Symbols of carefree childhood and the chaos of a decade that loved to experiment. Looking back, it is hard not to laugh at how dangerous, harmless fun once was. They were toys that taught a whole generation one unforgettable lesson. Sometimes excitement really can break in your hands. If you lived through the 1970s, you remember the feel of it between your toes. Shag carpeting was more than a design choice. It was a movement. Bold colors, thick fibers, and the kind of plush softness that made you want to lie down and never get up. From mustard yellows to burnt oranges, it blanketed floors in every room, including bathrooms, which is an idea no one has really been able to explain. Shag was fun and funky, but it was also a magnet for everything you never wanted in your house. Dust, dirt, pet hair, smells. And once it was in there, it stayed. Vacuuming was a chore. Deep cleaning was a nightmare. The very feature that made shag carpet so appealing, its thick, luxurious texture, was exactly what made it impossible to clean. People were not just pulling it up for new trends, they were trying to reclaim their air quality. What started as a symbol of comfort quickly became a maintenance disaster. Eventually, people tore it up in favor of cleaner, sleeker options. Shag rugs might have made a small comeback, But the wall-to-wall version? It is staying in the past, where it belongs. Of course, nothing trapped dust or the mood of a dark, cramped house, quite like what was hanging on the walls. Wood sunken living rooms, also called conversation pits, were the ultimate mix of groovy style and impractical design. In the 1970s, you would step down a few inches, or sometimes a whole foot, into a recessed area in the middle of your living room, surrounded by low-slung couches that formed a cozy little nest. The idea was that everyone could sit at the same level, leaning in for deep talks over fondue or a record spinning on the turntable. It was meant to be intimate, but in reality, you spent half your time watching guests trip as they forgot to step down. These pits often came covered in the plushest carpet you could find, shag naturally, and the walls around them might be painted in rich earth tones or bold oranges and reds. Hosting in one of these felt modern and sophisticated, even if getting out of it took some effort. Kids loved running laps around the rim or diving into the cushions like it was their own personal playpen. Adults loved that it felt different, like a little architectural wink that said, "This house is not like the others." It was a bold statement piece you could not ignore, literally, since it was built into the floor. And while today it might seem like a hazard or a dated novelty, back then it was the height of stylish home entertaining. Dichlorvos pest strips, sold as no-pest strips, hung in kitchens, bedrooms, and basements throughout the 1970s, quietly releasing vapor that kept insects away without sprays or traps. What made them remarkable was the slow-release delivery mechanism. The chemical was embedded in a resin, allowing controlled evaporation over weeks, maintaining consistent concentration without the peaks and drops of traditional sprays. Researchers recognize this sustained release model as genuinely clever engineering that influenced modern drug delivery patches and timed release systems. Families loved the simplicity, just hang the strip and forget it. But that same vapor did not discriminate between insects and the people breathing around it. Dichlorvos belongs to the organophosphate family, chemicals that interfere with nerve function in humans just as effectively as in pests. Children, elderly members, and pets absorbed it continuously, often without symptoms until real damage had occurred. When regulators banned them, the strips vanished quickly, but the delivery concept they pioneered lives on in safer applications that owe their design principles to a product too dangerous for homes. Lead-glazed ceramic crockpots were treasured kitchen tools in the 1970s, sitting on counters and simmering family meals for hours while parents worked or ran errands. The glazes gave them a beautiful shine that made them look both rustic and refined, perfect for Sunday roasts and holiday gatherings. Families trusted these pots completely, filling them with soups, stews, and slow-cooked meats that fed everyone from toddlers to grandparents. Nobody imagined that the glaze itself was the problem. When acidic foods like tomatoes or wine simmered for hours against the ceramic surface, lead from the glaze leached directly into the meal. Families consumed it bite by bite, year after year, never suspecting that dinner was slowly poisoning them. Children were especially vulnerable, absorbing lead faster than adults and suffering damage that accumulated silently. When researchers tested old crockpots and found alarming lead levels, the warning spread quickly. Regulators banned lead glazes in cookware and urged families to discard anything that could not be verified as safe. It is deeply unsettling to realize that a pot meant to nourish families was quietly contaminating the very meals it prepared. Hand-cranked egg beaters were a kitchen essential long before electricity became universal. These clever tools used gears and a spinning handle to whip eggs, cream, or batter with surprising efficiency. Housewives prized them for their precision and control, though they required steady hands and strong wrists. For many, the sound of the gears clicking and whirring became part of the morning routine, a mechanical heartbeat of breakfast. Some homemakers claimed they could feel the exact moment the eggs reached the perfect froth, trusting muscle memory over measurement. In some kitchens, the same egg beater was used for decades, its handle worn smooth from years of breakfasts and Sunday cakes. It was craftsmanship made to last, built for a world that believed tools should serve generations, not seasons. Children would often beg to help, turning the handle and watching the blades blur into motion. Despite their simplicity, they represented progress, one step closer to the modern appliances that would transform kitchens in the decades to come. Today, they sit in antique shops as quaint reminders of when cooking was a true hands-on art form. There was also a time before the plastics of today were something we saw in our daily lives, and in those days, like the 1960s, we had things like cloth-covered electrical wiring. Today, the standard in any kind of home worth its money is thermoplastic-coated wiring. But before that, people had this rubberized cloth that was used to insulate wires because of how cheap it was and because it was the most effective insulator at the time. Most homes that were constructed in the first half of the 1900s are covered in this stuff, and as a result are riskier. Sometimes the expensive options are worth it, because what you pay for is what you get. And in this case, what America got was brittle wiring that had broken down easily. It was also pretty weak to damage from local wildlife like New York rats. Some systems of this nature had asbestos in them too, and on top of that, it simply just was not too good at its job. Another thing we are glad the United States has moved on from for a better quality of life. Tin television trays, you know the ones. Folding legs, painted flowers, maybe a bird or two perched awkwardly near the corner. They were like pop-up magic tricks for dinner time. You would unfold one, snap it into place, and suddenly you were royalty eating off fine china. Except it was baked ziti on a cartoon plate and the queen was I Love Lucy or Bonanza. These trays were an unspoken invitation to slow down, eat up, and maybe spill a little. They came in sets. You would keep them stacked in the corner, leaned up behind the recliner, or stored in a metal rack that squeaked every time you moved it. And no one cared if the paint chipped. That just meant it had character. You remember waiting for your show to come on, tray ready, paper towel napkin folded in half like a tuxedo. This was dinner and a show, 1960s style. Those trays taught us that food was not just nourishment. It was a moment. And moments were worth sitting down for. But the real charm came after dinner, when the parents would kick back with a drink, and that is where the next forgotten favorite hung on the wall like a quiet old friend. Somewhere near the kitchen, usually above the sink or on the side of a wooden pantry cabinet, lived something you probably never gave a second thought to, until now. A full-size waterbed, once filled, weighed approximately 1,600 pounds. Installing one meant dragging a garden hose through your house, filling a vinyl bladder with up to 235 gallons of water, and hoping your floor joists could handle it. By 1987, 22% of all mattresses sold in America were waterbeds, a $2 billion industry built on the promise of comfort and the reality of seasickness. You had to add conditioner annually to prevent algae from growing inside the mattress. You needed a heater because sleeping on cold water was miserable. And if your cat or a stray action figure punctured the vinyl, you woke up in a swamp. Landlords banned them. Renters' insurance refused to cover them. Moving required draining the entire thing with an electric pump and starting over. The inventor, Charles Hall, created his prototype as a graduate thesis at San Francisco State in 1968, and he reportedly still sleeps on one today. Towels cut into rags were a necessity in households where waste was unthinkable. When a towel grew too thin or frayed to dry hands, it was given new life. Scissors snipped them into squares, which were stacked in closets or tucked under sinks. Suddenly, they became the cleaning cloths for every mess imaginable. Grease on the stove, mud on the floor, or even a quick spill at the dinner table. All of it was wiped with a towel that had once dried countless hands. Sometimes the edges were hemmed roughly to make them last longer, and other times they unraveled until they were just strings. Kids were sent to fetch rags for chores, learning early that nothing was ever thrown out without another use. A pile of these rags under the sink was as essential as soap or sponges. Mothers taught children that nothing ever truly wore out. It just found a new purpose. Even the smallest scraps were used to polish shoes or shine windows, proof that resourcefulness ran in every stitch. These rags saved money on paper towels and kept homes running smoothly without extra cost. It was not glamorous, but it was dependable, and in the 1970s, that was more valuable than appearances. Paint strippers with methylene chloride were considered the heavy-duty answer to stubborn paint jobs, and anyone tackling home renovation in the 1970s probably had a can of it in the garage. It worked fast, cut through layers of paint like nothing else, and made do-it-yourself. Projects feel like magic. But the warning labels were vague, and the risks were far worse than anyone realized. Methylene chloride turns into carbon monoxide inside the body, and in enclosed spaces, it can kill within minutes. Many people brushed it on in basements, bathrooms, or sheds with no ventilation at all. They would kneel down, breathe deeply without thinking, and collapse before they understood what was happening. The tragedies piled up, from weekend hobbyists to seasoned professionals, all undone by a chemical sold at any hardware shop. By the time regulators stepped in, the pattern was already undeniable. These products were simply too dangerous for everyday homes. Looking back, it is hard to believe that something so lethal sat quietly on store shelves for years, disguised as just another home improvement tool. Avocado green appliances were more than a color. They were a mood. From refrigerators to blenders, that earthy green hue ruled every American kitchen. It was bold, cozy, and just a little rebellious, the color of optimism wrapped in formica and chrome. It clashed gloriously with orange countertops and mustard curtains, a riot of confidence in every corner. Even now, you can spot that green in old photos and instantly feel the warmth of home. It made kitchens feel alive, cheerful, and ready for company. Even when the power went out, those green machines still seemed to glow with personality. The 1970s believed in matching everything, and so kitchens glowed in shades of green that looked both fresh and lived in. Families cooked, gathered, and laughed around those machines, unaware they were designing an era's aesthetic. Today, people look back at those avocado tones with a mix of horror and affection. For all their garish charm, those appliances never really went out of style. They just waited for the next wave of nostalgia to bring them home again. Asbestos-lined toaster ovens were considered modern marvels in the 1980s, compact appliances that made morning routines faster and kitchens more efficient. The insulation inside kept exteriors cool while interiors heated quickly, a feature that seemed clever for busy families. People used them daily for toast, bagels, and frozen snacks, never imagining the material keeping everything safe from burns was releasing microscopic fibers into their kitchens. Asbestos resisted heat so well that manufacturers tucked it into appliances without hesitation. People leaned over these toaster ovens while waiting for food, breathing warm air that carried particles no one could see. When scientists confirmed the link between asbestos exposure and devastating lung diseases, the industry shifted almost overnight. Recalls swept through stores, and families were urged to discard toaster ovens they had trusted for years. The realization stung because something designed to make life easier had been quietly introducing harm into the home. Today, those old toaster ovens remind us that convenience can mask dangers hiding just beneath the surface. The lead was in the gasoline in the pipes, but the carcinogen on the kitchen counter came disguised as the healthiest snack a parent could offer. Alar was the trade name for dimenazide, a growth regulator sprayed on apple trees to improve color and keep fruit from dropping before harvest. Uniroyal Chemical Company had sold it since 1968, and by the 1980s it was applied to a large share of the American apple crop. When heated during processing into juice or applesauce, Alar broke down into UDMH, a compound the EPA classified as a probable human carcinogen. The agency had known about the risk since the early 1980s but dragged its feet. In February 1989, CBS's 60 Minutes aired a segment called A is for Apple, featuring a skull and crossbones over a red apple. Schools pulled apples from cafeteria menus overnight. Uniroyal pulled Alar from the market later that year, and the EPA formally banned its food uses. Polyester was the fabric of the future, shiny, smooth, and effortlessly modern. In the 1970s, it covered everything from clothing to home decor. When polyester curtains hit the market, homeowners fell in love. They looked elegant, never needed ironing, and came in every color imaginable. But there was a hidden problem. Polyester burns fast and hot. A single spark from a candle, a brush against a space heater, or even a cigarette could turn them into a sheet of fire. Magazines called them the miracle of modern fibers, celebrating their durability and low maintenance, but left out the fact that once they caught fire, they melted onto skin. The chemical smell of burning polyester haunted firefighters and emergency rooms alike. It was fashion and function turned fatal under the glow of a single match. Reports of sudden household blazes started surfacing, each one eerily similar. The wrinkle-free revolution had quietly introduced a new kind of danger. Yet companies rarely mentioned that part in their glossy catalogs. People wanted convenience, and they got it, along with a risk they never saw coming. Polyester promised glamour but delivered flames. It is chilling to think how many living rooms glowed with more than just style. Built-in intercom systems were supposed to be the future. Press a button in the kitchen, and you could talk to someone 2 rooms away. No yelling, no walking upstairs, just crystal clear communication across your house. Except, not really. These systems were clunky, ugly, and often broken. The audio quality was closer to a drive-through speaker than anything futuristic. Static, echoes, and random bursts of feedback became the norm, and when they did work, it often felt like you were eavesdropping more than talking. Even as a novelty, the intercom felt outdated within a few years, replaced by cordless phones and then home cell lines. What was once cutting-edge quickly became awkward background noise. People quickly realized that a cordless phone, or just walking down the hall, was faster and less frustrating. Within a decade, these systems went from high-end status symbols to forgotten wall boxes gathering dust. Some were hidden behind art, others were ripped out entirely. But if avocado green had a twin in tragedy, it was coming next. A color so bold, so sunny, and so divisive that it burned itself into America's kitchen memory forever. Colored bathtubs and sinks were a far cry from today's standard white. Bathrooms in the 1970s came in pastel pinks, powder blues, mint greens, and even bold harvest golds. These colors turned the bathroom into a fully designed space instead of an afterthought. Some homes even went the extra step, matching the soap dishes, toothbrush holders, and light fixtures to the exact same shade. It created a sense of luxury and intention that made the bathroom feel just as stylish as the living room. Even a quick morning routine felt a little more glamorous when surrounded by so much coordinated color. Fixtures matched tile, wallpaper, and even the towels, creating a coordinated look from top to bottom. Stepping into a pink bathtub under matching pink tiles felt indulgent and a little playful. The sink might have chrome legs or be built into a matching colored vanity. People embraced the idea that even the most functional rooms deserved personality. While these fixtures are rare today, they remain one of the most charming and sometimes surprising reminders of 1970s home style. Steel lead tinsel for Christmas trees was one of those decorations that did something no modern version has ever replicated. The strands were heavier than plastic, which meant they hung perfectly straight, catching every flicker of light and sending it bouncing across the room like a frozen waterfall. Scientists today acknowledge that the weight of lead tinsel was a genuine engineering advantage because it draped with a natural elegance that lightweight alternatives cannot imitate. Families in the 1970s loved how effortlessly it transformed even the simplest tree into something spectacular, and kids ran their fingers through the strands without a worry. Nobody thought about toxicity. People trusted it because it worked beautifully and cost almost nothing. But lead is a cumulative poison, building silently in the body, especially dangerous for children who touched it and placed their hands near their mouths. Once regulators connected the shimmer to serious health risks, the bans came swiftly. Every plastic imitation tries to capture that drape, but none come close. It is a strange legacy, knowing the most beautiful version of a simple decoration was also the one that could quietly cause the most harm. Ungrounded 2-prong electrical outlets were installed in every room of every home without anyone thinking twice. Electricians wired entire houses this way, and families plugged in lamps, televisions, and appliances without imagining any risk. The outlets looked simple and clean, and that simplicity felt safe. But these outlets lacked a grounding wire, the critical safety feature that redirects stray electrical current away from appliances and human bodies. When something shorted inside an appliance or moisture crept into a plug, electricity had nowhere safe to go. People received shocks reaching for toasters, touching lamp switches, or unplugging cords from damp bathroom walls. Fires started silently behind walls where overloaded circuits sparked against wood framing. Investigators traced countless fires and electrocution deaths back to these outlets. When building codes caught up, regulators required grounded three-prong systems in new construction and demanded upgrades in older homes. Families realized the outlets they trusted for decades were quiet hazards hiding behind every faceplate. It is a sobering reminder that familiar parts of a house can carry dangers nobody sees until tragedy strikes. Ration token holders were the quiet heroes of wartime organization. During the 1940s, every family depended on red and blue ration tokens to buy essentials like meat, sugar, and fuel. These tokens were small, easy to lose, and nearly impossible to replace if misplaced. So, homemakers used metal or wooden trays to keep them sorted by color and value, almost like tiny treasuries sitting on the kitchen counter. At the end of each week, families would gather around the table to count their tokens, deciding what to buy and what to skip until the next issue. Some mothers kept secret stashes tucked away for emergencies, an extra pound of sugar, a few gallons of gas, maybe even a Sunday roast. The tokens didn't just measure resources, they measured hope, rationed out one chip at a time. Children often treated the tokens like pocket money, learning early that every piece represented real survival, an extra meal, an extra week of warmth. Each household's tokens reflected their sacrifice and patience, the daily rhythm of living under rationing. When payday came, mothers would count them one by one, careful not to waste even a single chip. The trays were never fancy, but they carried enormous weight in keeping families fed. Today, those holders look like simple curiosities from a simpler time, but in truth, they were the heartbeat of a nation trying to hold together through scarcity and grit. If you thought we were done with unsafe industry practices, brace yourself because we are yet to discuss clay pipes. Clay pipes were popularized because of how effective of a repellent they were. Clay as a material started being used mostly in the 1950s when the American economy was struggling to fix city sewage system projects because of budget issues. Around 60% of the sewerage system was made before this time, however, it was rotting and needed replacements in many areas. Surprisingly, clay was repellent to most of the usual sewage of an American city, which consisted primarily of your usual toxic martini of trashed food, cigarette butts, and liquid waste. Clay pipes happened to be extremely resistant to all of these while also being long-lasting, which is why they began seeing so much use in projects around and after the 50s. Hindsight can be a thing that is hard to grasp in the present moment, though, and people were certainly not at fault for wanting to make the most out of some good pipes. Clay pipes were unfortunately also vulnerable to root growth and invasion, as well as weak to heavy ground traffic, all of which were common in sewage systems across America, so eventually they were replaced too. The Sears and Roebuck catalog, or J.C. Penney, or Montgomery Ward. You remember those massive books, right? They were less catalogs and more like dreams with price tags. Sitting on the coffee table or hidden under it, they were glossy, thick, and stuffed with everything a kid could want, or a grown-up could imagine affording one day. Toys, tools, drapes, kitchen gadgets, suits, perfume. It was all in there. And if you were lucky, your parents let you circle the items you liked with a pen, even if you both knew those wishes were just that. Wishes. These catalogs doubled as booster seats at family dinners and helped little ones reach the sink in the bathroom. They were part of the daily routine. You would flip through them while waiting for your show to start, or just to pass time on a rainy afternoon. Pages dog-eared, covers worn down, some even missing entire chunks from use. There was something so powerful about holding a book that seemed to hold everything. It made home feel bigger than it was, and while flipping pages may have sparked your imagination, it was what waited outside, hanging quietly on the line, that brought a kind of peace you cannot package in any catalog. Somewhere around 1984, someone decided that a strip of patterned paper running along the top of a wall would make any room feel finished. Wallpaper borders spread through American homes like a decorative virus. Kitchens got fruit motifs, bathrooms got seashells and anchors, nurseries got teddy bears, and living rooms got ivy vines that fooled no one. Applying them required a trough of water, a smoothing brush, and a tolerance for imprecision that most people lacked. The edges curled within weeks. The seams separated. The paste dried unevenly, leaving bubbles that made the wall look blistered. Removing them years later was worse. The adhesive bonded to the paint, and pulling the border off meant pulling the paint with it, leaving a ragged stripe of exposed drywall around the entire room. The borders were supposed to be a compromise, the personality of wallpaper without the commitment. They delivered the commitment without the personality. Glass peanut butter jars as drinking glasses were another household staple that poor families in the 1970s swore by. After the peanut butter was scraped clean, the jar was washed, dried, and placed right into the kitchen cabinet. Suddenly, it became a cup. Some were plain, others had designs printed on the glass, cartoon characters or promotional logos that made them even more appealing to kids. Families did not need to buy fancy drinkware when peanut butter brands practically provided it for free. A cold glass of milk tasted just as good in a jar as it did in anything store-bought, and water from the tap seemed to sparkle in thick glass that could survive endless drops. Kids fought over their favorites, claiming a certain jar as theirs and refusing to drink from another. Even visitors at the dinner table were handed a glass jar without apology, because that was just how things were. Over time, cupboards filled with mismatched jars, each one a reminder of how frugality kept families afloat. Today, people might chuckle at the idea, but in the 1970s, those jars were both practical and a little bit charming. Polyurethane cushions without fire barriers were the soft, bouncy heart of nearly every couch and living room chair in the 1970s, and nobody thought twice about sitting on them for hours. The furniture looked cozy, inviting, and perfectly harmless, but inside the cushions was a ticking time bomb. The foam was unbelievably flammable and burned hotter and faster than most people could even imagine. All it took was a dropped cigarette, a spark from a fireplace, or a child playing too close to a lamp for the entire cushion to erupt in flames. Families often had no warning at all, because the foam did not smolder slowly the way natural fibers did. Instead, it ignited instantly and produced thick black smoke that filled a room before anyone had time to react. Firefighters began reporting the same horrifying pattern in house after house, and investigators realized that these cushions were turning small accidents into full-blown tragedies. Government stepped in and demanded fire-resistant barriers, but only after far too many avoidable disasters. Looking back, it is unsettling to know that a perfectly ordinary piece of furniture could transform into something so dangerous without a single person in the home realizing it. Color-changing fiber optic centerpieces were the crown jewels of 1980s decor. A bundle of delicate plastic strands shimmered in rainbow light, casting a soft, shifting glow across coffee tables and mantels. They looked like something from outer space, a little tacky, a little mesmerizing. Guests couldn't stop watching the colors fade from blue to pink to green, as if time itself were melting. When the lights went out, the room would glow like a dreamscape, quiet, hypnotic, alive. Families would gather around them during parties, letting the soft glow wash over laughter and music. Even when unplugged, they looked magical, frozen mid-dance in a tangle of light and memory. Kids would sit cross-legged in front of them, hypnotized by the glowing strands like they were watching fireworks underwater. Even adults couldn't resist turning off the lights just to see the room transform into a swirl of color. Every flicker of color felt alive, pulsing in rhythm with the hum of the house. They were futuristic sculptures that turned any room into a little slice of neon fantasy. Every home that wanted to feel modern had one proudly on display. They didn't just light up a room. They made people dream about the future. Now, seeing one in a thrift shop feels like stumbling upon a lost artifact from an age when color itself felt alive. Polychlorinated biphenyl filled fluorescent light ballasts hummed quietly in ceilings throughout the 1980s, providing steady illumination in kitchens, basements, and garages without drawing attention. The ballasts regulated electrical current to keep tubes flickering evenly, and the PCB oil inside helped dissipate heat while preventing fires. Families rarely thought about what was hidden inside metal housings bolted above their heads. But when ballasts aged and overheated, they often leaked, dripping oily residue onto surfaces below without anyone noticing. Some leaked slowly for years, creating invisible contamination zones on countertops, shelves, and floors. The PCBs did not evaporate easily. They clung to dust particles and spread through ventilation systems, accumulating in carpets throughout the home. When scientists confirmed that PCBs caused cancer and disrupted hormones, the manufacturing ban was swift, but millions of ballasts already installed remained in place. Families discovered the danger only when fixtures failed or during renovations. Cleanup required specialized procedures and protective equipment. Today, those old ballasts stand as proof that even simple overhead lights can harbor secrets. It cost less than $3 at the drugstore. It smelled like artificial flowers and chemical propellant. And every spray was tearing a hole in the ozone layer 10 miles above your head. CFC-powered aerosol cans were everywhere in the 1980s, loaded with chlorofluorocarbons that propelled hairspray, deodorant, furniture polish, and oven cleaner. By the mid-1970s, more than 5 billion aerosol cans were produced annually in the United States alone. Chemists Sherwood Rowland and Mario Molina had warned as early as 1974 that CFCs were destroying stratospheric ozone, but the chemical industry dismissed the findings as inconclusive. The U.S. banned CFCs in consumer aerosols in 1978, yet they remained legal in refrigerators, air conditioners, and foam insulation well into the decade. The Montreal Protocol of 1987 finally committed the world to a full phase-out. By then, a measurable hole had already opened over Antarctica. Backyard games were a staple of the 1970s, and lawn darts, known as jarts, were the ultimate crowd pleaser. Big, colorful darts that you tossed toward a plastic ring in the grass. It sounded harmless enough. Families loved them. Picnics, reunions, and barbecues were not complete without a set. But those darts were heavy, sharp, and made of solid metal. A single misthrow could and did cause devastating injuries. Television commercials showed fathers and sons laughing as the darts soared through the air, never showing what happened when they missed. The tips, designed to stick into the ground, were strong enough to pierce skin, bone, even skulls. What began as family fun turned into a national debate over whether danger could ever be part of the game. For years, warnings went ignored. Advertisers showed smiling families, barefoot kids, and perfect summer skies. Behind the fun, hospitals were reporting accidents nationwide. Eventually, the government stepped in, banning them altogether. It is strange how something meant to bring families together ended up tearing so many apart. Today, lawn darts remain a reminder that even the most innocent games can turn deadly when safety takes a back seat. Popcorn ceilings were everywhere, and you did not think twice about them until one started flaking into your cereal. Created as an easy solution for soundproofing and hiding imperfections, these textured ceilings were sprayed on like cheap whipped cream, giving homes a bumpy, cratered look that no one questioned until they started falling apart. Vacuuming the ceiling became an actual task in some households, and painting over them was a test of endurance and futility. But the real danger was deeper than dust. Many popcorn ceilings contained asbestos, a now-banned toxic material that can cause serious health issues. Once people found out, the ceiling went from being just ugly to outright terrifying. Suddenly, every flake falling from above felt like a silent threat you could not ignore. That meant removing them was not just inconvenient, it was dangerous and expensive. Families who had lived under them for years were suddenly advised to bring in professionals just to make their homes safe again. something meant to be invisible became the most threatening part of the room. And the disasters did not stop there. Just take a look under your feet. Shag area rugs in wild colors were more than floor coverings. They were personality statements. These thick, fuzzy rugs came in oranges, yellows, bright reds, deep purples, basically any color that looked like it came straight out of a lava lamp. Walking barefoot on one felt like stepping into a field of soft grass if grass came in neon. They were meant to add warmth and texture to a room, but they often ended up stealing the spotlight entirely. A shag rug could take a neutral living room and instantly make it look like a page from a home decor catalog. The longer the fibers, the more luxurious it was considered, though it also meant you were finding mystery crumbs in there for years. Vacuuming them was practically a workout, and spills were a nightmare, but no one cared because they looked so fun. They anchored conversation areas, bedroom corners, or even bathrooms for the truly bold. Guests would inevitably sink their toes into the pile and comment on how soft it felt. These rugs were pure 1970s, colorful, indulgent, and just a little impractical. Asbestos oven mitts were the gold standard of kitchen protection, because nothing else could handle heat the way asbestos fiber did. Grandparents slipped their hands into those thick mitts and pulled cast iron straight from a blazing oven without flinching, trusting a material used in fireproofing for centuries. Scientists still acknowledge that asbestos had extraordinary thermal insulation, resisting temperatures that would melt or char almost any modern synthetic. The mitts felt indestructible, and families used the same pair for years, passing them down like reliable tools. People trusted them because they never failed at keeping hands safe from searing heat. But every grab and every fold released microscopic fibers that floated invisibly into the air and embedded themselves in lung tissue permanently. When medical evidence became undeniable, regulators banned asbestos from household products entirely. Modern mitts use silicone and aramid fibers that work reasonably well, but engineers confirm the thermal gap between those materials and asbestos is real and measurable. The safest version was never the best, and that uncomfortable truth still lingers in kitchens everywhere. Lawn jarts with steel-tipped points were one of the most beloved backyard games of the 1970s, sold at department stores and set up on lawns across the country every summer. The game was simple. Toss a heavy, pointed dart toward a plastic ring on the ground and see who could land closest. Families played for hours, children ran barefoot through the grass, and nobody stopped to consider the weight of metal sailing through the air above their heads. The darts were designed to stick into the ground on impact, and that sharpness made them dangerous beyond measure. When a child ran into the path of a throw or a dart sailed off course, the results were catastrophic. Emergency rooms reported skull fractures, puncture wounds, and deaths that devastated entire neighborhoods. Parents who thought they were giving children harmless outdoor fun found themselves facing tragedy instead. After years of mounting injuries and highly publicized fatalities, the federal government banned lawn jarts entirely. Stores pulled them from shelves, and families quietly threw them away. It remains one of the clearest examples of how something designed for joy can carry a danger no one anticipated. Wartime fat collection cans sat on stovetops across America, gleaming with leftover grease from the day's meals. Housewives carefully strained bacon drippings and cooking fat into these tins, knowing they were doing their part for the war. Once full, they would take the cans to local collection centers, where the fat would be processed into glycerin, used to make soap, explosives, and ammunition. It was a strange thought. The same grease that fried breakfast could one day fuel a bomb or help clean a soldier's uniform. Posters urged, "Your kitchen grease fights," a slogan that made every spoonful of bacon drippings feel like ammunition. Housewives compared how much they saved, proudly writing their totals on scrap paper beside the stove. Even the smallest families felt they were helping win the war from their kitchens. Families took pride in this strange form of recycling, seeing it as both patriotic and practical. Even children joined in, scraping pans and pouring carefully to avoid spilling a precious ounce. The government ran cheerful ads urging citizens to save your kitchen fat for victory. It turned a humble household task into a powerful act of contribution. Today, those dented grease cans tell a story of sacrifice, resourcefulness, and how every drop truly counted. By now, you must have gathered from this list that older homes are rife with faulty wiring and all kinds of electrical issues. Yes, the allure of a charming, nostalgic vintage two-story home in Brooklyn is definitely something hard to resist. A very reasonable price tag never helps matters, especially for newlyweds looking to purchase their first property or generally relocating on a budget. Many of these homes and buildings do come with faulty wiring. Fuse boxes that only provide 30 to 60 amp service just do not cut it now, and they did not meet standards in the late 1990s either as America's electricity needs progressed. Other issues would consist of low-voltage switches that would have bad wiring beneath the single plating, which often made them very short-lived. Even in recent memory, those lifespans are definitely nearing their end, and most manufacturers stay clear of them now. It also does not help that America had not yet figured out its way with a system of wiring that was safe, effective, and mass-producible in most homes from the last century. This is why we recommend buying properties built at least after the 70s. A book so important, you barely dared to open it. But when you did, the past came tumbling out. The family Bible. You did not mess with it. You did not rest your coffee mug on it. You did not doodle in the margins. That book held more than scriptures. It held the very record of your family's life. Inside the front cover, handwritten in careful cursive, were the names of people you had never met but somehow loved anyway. Great uncles, cousins lost too young, births marked with joy, deaths with a little cross next to the date. It was like holding a time capsule that smelled faintly of dust and furniture polish. This Bible usually lived on the coffee table or in a drawer of the china cabinet, sometimes displayed openly, sometimes tucked away, but always within reach. If a visitor asked about it, someone would proudly bring it out, flip through the delicate pages, and point to names with a reverence that felt sacred. It was not just a book. It was memory stitched into paper. And it reminded everyone in the house where they came from. Of course, not everything preserved in the home was so formal. Some heirlooms were made of metal, covered in paint, and sat quietly next to the toilet like it was the most natural thing in the world. Before you even sat down in a 1980s bathroom, you had to negotiate with a fuzzy toilet lid cover that refused to stay up. These shag-carpeted accessories came in every shade Sears could dream up: dusty rose, mocha brown, sun orange, moss green, and they arrived as part of a matching set that included a tank cover, a contour rug, and sometimes a carpeted tissue box holder. The pile was thick enough to trap moisture, hair, and questions about hygiene that nobody wanted to ask out loud. The lid never stayed propped open because the extra bulk made it top-heavy, which meant it slammed down without warning. Washing them was technically possible, but no amount of hot water could undo what happened when shag nylon lived next to a toilet for 6 months. Your grandmother had one in powder blue. Your aunt had one in harvest gold. And somewhere in a landfill, millions of them are still holding moisture. Bread bags reused as lunch bags were as natural as tying your shoes. When the loaf was gone, the clear plastic bag was shaken out, folded, and tucked in a drawer for the next school day. Sandwiches were wrapped in wax paper and slipped inside, ready to be carried to class. Kids often grumbled that their bread bag lunch looked less fancy than store-bought brown bags, but their parents knew better. It was free and practical. The bags carried more than sandwiches, too. They held cookies, apple slices, and sometimes even crayons or marbles when a quick container was needed. Some families used them as gloves on cold days, slipping them over socks to keep shoes dry in the snow. Others tied them into knots for makeshift storage, proof that even the thinnest bit of plastic had value. For families on tight budgets, nothing went unused, and every bread bag had a second life before finally being tossed. Looking back, it was another quiet reminder of how thrift defined the rhythm of daily life. Electric can openers without blade guards seemed like a futuristic upgrade for a 1970s kitchen. They promised hands-free ease, smooth cutting, and a modern convenience that felt like a small luxury people loved showing them off. Pressing a button, and watching the can spin as the lid lifted effortlessly. But the early models hid a serious flaw. They had exposed blades that could slice fingers as easily as metal, especially when children tried to use them or when adults reached to remove a stuck lid. Emergency rooms began reporting the same pattern of deep cuts and accidental injuries. What should have been an improvement turned into a hazard that waited for the slightest mistake. Manufacturers rushed to add guards and redesign the safety features, but the early models had already caused far too many accidents. It is a strange feeling knowing that a tool meant to make life easier ended up drawing more blood than any kitchen knife ever did. Amberglass dinnerware was what every family thought looked elegant back then: heavy, warm, and impossible to break. The golden brown plates glowed under dim kitchen lights, reflecting the soft, smoky tones of the 1970s. Dinner felt a little fancier when served on them, even if it was just meatloaf and instant mashed potatoes. They clinked softly against Formica tables and matched perfectly with harvest gold appliances. Even when the food was simple, those amber plates made it feel like a feast. The amber hue made everything seem cozy, as though each meal came with a built-in sunset. Even water looked richer in those glasses, shimmering like honey beneath the light of a hanging lamp. These were dishes that could survive a fall from the counter and a lifetime in the dishwasher. Their thick glass and honey tint turned ordinary meals into family rituals. Over time, though, they lost their sparkle, replaced by bright plastics and disposable plates. Now, when you find one at a garage sale, the nostalgia hits instantly. You can almost hear the clink of forks and the soft hum of conversation from decades ago. Lead-glazed ceramic coffee mugs sat proudly in kitchen cupboards throughout the 1980s, their colorful finishes and handcrafted charm making them favorites for morning rituals. Many came from overseas markets or craft fairs where artisans used traditional glazing techniques passed down through generations. What nobody realized was that lead in those beautiful glazes slowly dissolved into hot acidic beverages like coffee and citrus juice. Every morning sip delivered invisible doses of a neurotoxin that accumulated in bones and bloodstreams over time. Families collected these mugs as souvenirs and everyday essentials, never suspecting the vessel holding their comfort drink carried serious risk. Children drank hot cocoa from colorful cups, absorbing lead at levels that affected developing brains severely. When testing revealed dangerously high lead content in imported ceramics, regulators cracked down on manufacturing standards. Many beloved mugs were quietly discarded once families understood the truth. The ban protected future generations, but those who spent years drinking from contaminated cups wondered what damage had accumulated. It remains a reminder that beauty and danger sometimes share the same glaze. Dursban was the brand name for chlorpyrifos, an organophosphate pesticide manufactured by Dow Chemical and registered for home termite control in 1980. It quickly became one of the most commonly used indoor pesticides in the country, sprayed along baseboards, pumped into wall voids, and applied to lawns where kids played barefoot. Organophosphates work by disrupting the nervous system of insects, but they affect humans the same way at higher exposure levels. The sharp chemical smell lingered for days after application, and residue settled into carpets where toddlers crawled and put their hands in their mouths. Dow marketed it aggressively to homeowners and pest control operators alike. It took until the year 2000 for the EPA to announce a deal with manufacturers pulling nearly all residential uses off the market, citing risks to children as the driving concern. Parents in the 1970s wanted their babies to walk sooner, move faster, and explore the world safely. Baby walkers with metal frames seemed like the perfect invention, a sturdy little chariot for curious toddlers. The commercials showed smiling babies zipping around kitchens, their mothers laughing proudly. But reality was far from safe. The metal frames were heavy, the wheels moved too easily, and one wrong push sent babies tumbling downstairs or into sharp corners. Doctors and safety experts warned of the risks, but television ads kept showing picture-perfect homes where babies moved freely and safely. Behind the marketing glow were countless emergency room visits for skull fractures, broken limbs, and concussions. The wheels that symbolized independence also carried children straight into danger at speeds no one anticipated. Emergency rooms filled with injuries that no one saw coming. Pediatricians begged for the product to be rethought, but the market kept booming. It took years for regulations to catch up, and by then, the damage was done. What was supposed to symbolize independence became a silent threat rolling across living room floors. The sound of those tiny wheels once meant joy, but for many families, it ended in fear. Paneling was everywhere in the 1970s. It made your living room look like a den, your den look like a hunting lodge, and your basement look like a forgotten back room at a roadside bar. At first, it felt warm and cozy. Rich brown tones, faux wood grain, maybe even a little glossy finish if you were lucky. But there was a problem. Most of it was not real wood. It was thin, pressed panels with a printed veneer. It dented easily, warped when damp, and turned rooms into narrow, lightless boxes. The illusion of natural wood faded fast when corners started peeling and warping with moisture. What was meant to bring a rustic touch ended up feeling cheap and oppressive. Once a sign of stylish Americana, it aged into a symbol of dated taste. The worst part? You could not just paint over it. People spent entire weekends trying to rip the stuff down or cover it with drywall. Today, retro renovators might leave a single accent wall for nostalgia, but most of us remember wood paneling for what it truly was: fake, dark, and way too committed to its own aesthetic. And when the wall started closing in, families turned to high-tech solutions to feel connected inside the home. Unfortunately, those did not age much better. Orange and avocado green kitchens were not just popular, they were everywhere. Entire walls were painted in these earthy tones, and the appliances matched perfectly. The refrigerator, the oven, even the countertop blender could be avocado green or a bright burnt orange that practically glowed under the kitchen lights. It was all about warmth and coziness, reflecting the 1970s love for natural, organic colors, even if organic meant the shade of a ripe avocado or a bowl of citrus fruit. Wooden cabinets often had deep, dark stains, complementing the bold colors while making the space feel richer. It might seem shocking now, but back then, people thought these hues were timeless. Your morning toast popped up against a backdrop of green enamel, and your coffee pot steamed away beside an orange mixer. Families gathered in these kitchens for everything from breakfast to late-night snacks, surrounded by colors that felt vibrant and alive. These choices were not subtle. They were statements, and homeowners wore them proudly. Looking back, it is hard to believe anyone thought it would never go out of style. But in its day, an avocado green appliance was a badge of taste and modernity. Strippers with methylene chloride were the most powerful tools in any renovator's arsenal during the 1970s, cutting through layers of paint with a speed nothing on today's shelves can match. Chemists acknowledge that methylene chloride's molecular structure lets it penetrate and dissolve paint bonds at a rate safer solvents cannot replicate. One application, a few minutes of patience, and decades of layered paint blistered and peeled away cleanly. Homeowners loved the efficiency, tackling weekend projects with confidence and finishing in hours what would otherwise take days. The results were dramatic and satisfying. But methylene chloride converts to carbon monoxide inside the body, and in enclosed spaces, the fumes can become lethal within minutes. People knelt over their work, breathing deeply without thinking, and collapsed before understanding what was happening. Tragedies mounted steadily, from hobbyists to seasoned professionals. When regulators stepped in, the ban was firm. Modern alternatives require more coats, more time, and more effort, and professional restorers openly acknowledge that nothing strips paint as effectively as the chemical that proved too dangerous to keep selling. Asbestos pipe insulation wrapped around hot water pipes and heating ducts in basements across the nation, keeping heat from escaping and protecting families from burns. The fibrous material looked sturdy, and contractors installed it in nearly every home built or renovated during the 1970s. Parents walked past it on their way to the laundry. Children played near it during basement games, and nobody imagined the quiet danger hiding inside. As insulation aged, it deteriorated. Fibers broke loose and drifted into the air, settling on clothes, toys, and every surface nearby. People breathed them without feeling a thing, never suspecting that microscopic particles were embedding deep in lung tissue. Decades later, doctors diagnosed mesothelioma, asbestosis, and lung cancers in people who could not understand how they were exposed. When investigators traced the source to basement insulation, the realization was devastating. Regulators banned asbestos in building materials and classified old pipe wrap as hazardous waste. Removing it now requires sealed barriers, respirators, and certified disposal. It is chilling to think that material meant to protect families carried a far deadlier threat. Flour sack clothing fabric might sound like desperation, but to 1940s homemakers, it was ingenuity at its finest. During wartime, every scrap of material was precious, and companies began printing colorful floral or striped designs directly onto flour sacks. When the flour was gone, families would wash, bleach, and stitch the soft cotton into dresses, aprons, or curtains. Some women even chose their flour brand based on the prettiest patterns, turning grocery shopping into a hunt for fabric. In small towns, sewing circles would meet just to trade flour sacks, 2 blue blossoms for a pink stripe, a green check for a floral print. Children wore those colors proudly, not knowing their clothes had once held grain instead of thread. What started as thrift became art, a collective effort to keep dignity alive when luxury was a memory. Seamstresses took great pride in transforming humble packaging into Sunday best. Children wore flour sack shirts to school, while mothers matched their aprons to their tablecloths with careful precision. It was recycling before the word existed, born from necessity and creativity. What began as a frugal solution became a fashion statement, one that quietly proved beauty could survive even the hardest times. If we are going over wiring hazards, then it is only right to mention knob and tube wiring, which were in pretty regular use in North America as far back as the 1880s. See, the danger from these ones rose from the fact that they had copper conductors that were poorly insulated. Yet they would run all over the ceiling and walls of buildings as well as insulation tubes. If you ever remember those old janky buildings with wiring inside tubes sprawling across the roof, all centered around these weird-looking knobs, you know what we mean. To save costs, most K&T work often had the supply and return wires in different places, while ideally they should be placed right next to each other, both so that they were simpler to understand in building plans and so that they were safer within junction boxes. This was a practice that the NEC replaced this method of wiring with. In those times, it used to be called the Carter system, if you have ever heard your dad whining about modern circuits. God bless them for doing that too, because a lot of headaches are saved as a result today. A bottle opener, bolted to the wall, ready for action. Sometimes it was shaped like a Coca-Cola cap. Other times it looked like it belonged in a garage, all heavy and cast iron. The bottle opener did not move. It did not need batteries. It never stopped working. You just popped the cap, heard that fizzy hiss, and the little metal tray below, if you had one, caught the cap like a souvenir. Every dad, uncle, and neighbor seemed to have one of these. Back when beer came in glass bottles and soda was a treat for guests, the wall-mounted bottle opener was the start of many small celebrations. You could always count on it during barbecue season or when your father finally fixed the lawnmower. You did not ask it for much, but somehow it was always there when you needed it. And if you think a chunk of metal on the wall could carry that much weight, wait until you remember the warm, silent presence of a little fabric sign that told you everything would be just fine. If it could be coated in brass, the 1980s made sure it was. Cabinet pulls, towel racks, lamp bases, picture frames, faucets, shower doors, curtain rods, and ceiling fan blades, all gleaming in that warm yellow gold tone that screamed prosperity to anyone who walked through the front door. A single bathroom could contain brass on the faucet, the towel ring, the toilet paper holder, the light switch plate, and the mirror frame, creating an effect that was less elegant and more like standing inside a trumpet. Keeping it polished was a part-time job. Brass tarnished in humid rooms, turned green near water, and showed every fingerprint. Families kept tubes of Brasso under the sink the way later generations would keep stainless steel cleaner. By the mid-1990s, brushed nickel and chrome had quietly taken over, and entire neighborhoods spent their weekends unscrewing brass hardware and pretending they had never loved it. Matched hand-me-down dishes filled cupboards across the country. Very few poor families had a matching set, and no one cared. Plates came from grandmothers, cousins, or neighbors, each one a different color or pattern. A dinner table might hold one floral plate, one plain white, and one chipped saucer pressed into service because nothing else was available. Glasses were the same, no two alike, yet all functional. Meals were served on whatever surface could hold food, and somehow the mix made the table feel more homey, more real. Kids learned quickly which plate was theirs, even if it was cracked or faded, and they felt comfort when it appeared at mealtime. Visitors noticed, but it was understood that food mattered more than presentation. Families took pride in feeding everyone, not in impressing anyone, and mismatched dishes became part of the story of every meal. They spoke of survival, community, and the way love always mattered more than perfect table settings. Chemical toilet bowl cakes with banned disinfectants were once found in every bathroom, tucked under the rim of the toilet like a secret cleaning assistant. They promised powerful sanitizing results, bright colors, fresh smells, and a sparkling bowl with no effort at all. Ads showed families proudly popping them into place, believing they were protecting their homes from germs. What they were actually doing was filling small, poorly ventilated bathrooms with toxic fumes. The chemicals inside these cakes reacted with air and moisture, releasing vapors that irritated eyes, throats, and lungs. Some children fainted, adults developed headaches, and pets avoided the bathroom altogether. The danger was multiplied in tiny homes or apartments where fans were weak and windows rarely opened. Over time, researchers realized these disinfectants were far harsher than anyone knew and could cause long-term respiratory damage. Governments banned the most dangerous formulas once the truth came out, but by then, countless families had breathed in those fumes day after day without ever suspecting the cause of their discomfort. It is a chilling reminder of how something sold as cleanliness can become the very thing that pollutes your home. Popcorn air poppers turned living rooms into miniature movie theaters. With a whir and a rush of warm air, kernels exploded into fluffy white clouds that filled every bowl in sight. Kids gathered around the counter, watching in awe as the popcorn burst out like a magic trick. Sometimes the popper would send a rogue kernel flying across the room, and laughter would follow like clockwork. Butter dripped down fingers, the smell filling every corner of the house with joy. The air filled with that unmistakable buttery smell, the kind that clung to furniture and pajamas long after the movie ended. It was messy, loud, and perfect, the soundtrack of laughter mixed with the rhythm of kernels hitting the bowl. No oil, no mess, just endless snacking potential. The smell of fresh popcorn mixed with the sound of laughter and the flicker of the television made Saturday nights unforgettable. Back then, a simple air popper could make an ordinary evening feel like an event. It wasn't just about the popcorn. It was about gathering together. Even now, that sound and smell can take you right back to a time when happiness came in a yellow plastic machine. Mercury-filled tilt switches inside wall thermostats were the silent heartbeat of temperature control in 1980s homes, clicking softly whenever furnaces kicked on or air conditioning started humming. Inside each small glass capsule was a bead of liquid mercury that rolled back and forth, completing the electrical circuit that kept families comfortable. People adjusted these thermostats daily without knowing they were handling devices containing one of the most toxic heavy metals on Earth. If a thermostat broke during replacement, that tiny mercury bead could spill onto floors and vents, vaporizing slowly into the air for years. Families breathed it in without realizing the source, and children sometimes played with the shiny liquid if they found it. Once scientists documented how mercury accumulated in bodies and damaged nervous systems, regulators moved quickly to phase out these switches. Homeowners were urged to dispose of them through hazardous waste programs. The ban brought safer digital alternatives, but the memory of those toxic capsules lingers as a warning about comfort and danger sharing the same wall. Your parents filled the tank every week, and the exhaust pipe pumped lead directly into the air your family breathed. Leaded gasoline had been standard in America since the 1920s, when General Motors and Standard Oil introduced tetraethyl lead as an anti-knock additive. The health risks were documented almost immediately, but the petroleum industry spent decades dismissing the evidence. The phase-out began in the mid-1970s, but leaded fuel was not fully banned in the United States until 1996, meaning it was still available at pumps throughout the entire decade. Lead settled into soil along every highway, driveway, and school parking lot in the country, where it remains today. Researchers later estimated that childhood lead exposure from gasoline during this era lowered the collective IQ of an entire generation of Americans. No company that profited from it was ever held fully accountable. Nothing said comfort like curling up under an electric blanket on a cold night. They were luxury and warmth rolled into one, a modern marvel for the modern family. But early models had a dangerous flaw: poor wiring. Wires frayed inside the fabric, sparks flew, and fires started in the middle of the night. The cozy hum of electricity felt like progress itself. No more cold sheets or frosty mornings. But inside those blankets, tangled wires rubbed and wore thin with each use, turning comfort into kindling. One overheated coil could transform a peaceful night into a blaze that consumed the very bed it was meant to warm. What was supposed to be comfort became catastrophe. People trusted their blankets to keep them safe and warm, not realizing that one flick of the switch could ignite the bed beneath them. Manufacturers eventually added safety switches and temperature controls, but not before tragedy struck countless homes. The danger of electric blankets was quiet but terrifying. It lived in the very object meant to bring comfort. Even now, some still remember that faint electrical smell, the hum of danger disguised as luxury. They were supposed to bring families closer, literally. The 1970s conversation pit was the sunken living room trend that promised intimacy, a cool, modern flair, and space-saving elegance. You would step down into a cozy nest of shag carpet and low-slung cushions surrounded by walnut paneling and maybe even a built-in bar. It looked like something from a futuristic home magazine, the kind of place where you could host groovy parties or settle in for deep chats. But in practice, it was awkward, inconvenient, and kind of dangerous. People tripped, drinks spilled, kids fell. The novelty of a lowered living space wore off fast when people realized how hard it was to furnish and how easy it was to injure yourself. In the end, the only thing the conversation pit really sparked was a conversation about remodeling costs. And cleaning it? Imagine vacuuming stairs and crevices after every visit. As the decades wore on, what had once seemed bold and modern quickly felt dated and bizarre, like a relic of a dream that never quite worked. Real estate agents began referring to them as trip pits. Renovators filled them in. It turns out that deliberately building a hole into your living room is not the best long-term plan. And while conversation pits disappeared quietly, their colorful cousin in the kitchen refused to go without making a scene. Patterned linoleum flooring was the unsung hero of 1970s kitchens and bathrooms. It came in bold geometric prints, faux brick, floral designs, you name it. It was durable, easy to clean, and often surprisingly soft underfoot. Some homeowners even coordinated their linoleum patterns with their kitchen curtains or wallpaper for a truly unified look. Children could spend hours tracing the repeating shapes with their fingers or toy cars. The colors stayed bright for years, giving kitchens a cheerful energy no matter the season. Homeowners loved that it could mimic expensive tile or stone for a fraction of the cost. Some patterns were subtle. Others were so loud they practically vibrated under the fluorescent lights. The kitchen table often sat right on top of it, surrounded by matching vinyl chairs. In bathrooms, it added a pop of style without the cold feel of tile. Linoleum was also a DIY favorite. You could install it yourself with a little patience and a lot of adhesive. The patterns might make you dizzy today, but back then they were considered fun, energetic, and full of life. Lead-soldered canned foods were a pantry staple in the 1970s, stacked in neat rows promising long shelf life and simple meal preparation. What families never considered was that the lead solder creating those airtight seals was one of the most effective preservation methods of its era. Scientists acknowledge that lead bonds were extraordinarily tight, preventing air, moisture, and bacteria from entering with a reliability tin alternatives initially struggled to match. Grandparents relied on these cans for soups, vegetables, and meats, opening them daily without questioning how the container might affect food. But lead does not stay locked in metal when it contacts acidic ingredients like tomatoes or citrus. It leaches into the contents, turning a convenient item into a quiet source of contamination that accumulated with every meal. Doctors traced rising cases of poisoning back to these soldered seams, and regulators moved to eliminate lead from all food packaging. The transition to tin welded seams took years, and early replacements did not seal as reliably. Engineers still note that the original lead bonds set a benchmark for hermetic sealing that required considerable effort to surpass safely. Kerosene space heaters without venting were a lifeline for families saving money during cold winters in the 1970s. People placed them in living rooms, bedrooms, and basements, watching the warm glow spread across the floor as the chill faded. The heaters felt practical and efficient, a quick solution when central heating could not keep up or when the oil bill climbed too high. Families gathered around them the way they might gather around a fireplace, trusting the warmth completely. But these heaters burned fuel indoors without any exhaust system, quietly releasing carbon monoxide and nitrogen dioxide directly into the air. In tightly sealed homes, the buildup could become deadly within hours. Some families went to sleep warm and never woke up, while others suffered headaches and confusion they could not explain. When investigators traced deaths to unvented kerosene heaters, regulators moved to ban the most dangerous models entirely. Families who relied on them for years were stunned to learn how close they had come to tragedy. Today, only properly vented heaters are allowed, but the memory of those silent dangers lingers. Powdered soap flakes were the unsung heroes of 1940s laundry day. Before the rise of liquid detergents, these little boxes of flakes were the standard in every household. Housewives would scoop them into wash tubs, stirring the mixture into hot water until a thick foam formed. The scent of soap and steam filled the air, marking the start of hours of scrubbing, wringing, and rinsing. Many women swore by certain brands, claiming one made whites brighter, while another was gentler on the skin. Children learned early to keep their hands out of the soapy water, but sometimes ended up covered in bubbles anyway. The chore was endless, but so was the pride when the sheets came out gleaming and sweet-smelling under the sun. Unlike today's automated machines, laundry then was pure labor, and soap flakes were a homemaker's closest ally. Advertisements boasted of whiter whites and pure cleanliness, though many women knew it came at the price of raw, chapped hands. Yet there was pride in those efforts. The smell of fresh linen drying on the line symbolized care and dignity. Powdered flakes may seem primitive now, but in their day they represented progress and perseverance wrapped in a simple cardboard box. Since we are covering most aspects of a residence, let's go to the kitchen and check out coal-fired stoves, which were first invented in 1833 but remained popular well into the 90s. Easy to burn with very little soot, these were a very solid kitchen choice that most people picked for any cooking need. Electrical stoves and the like had not become too common and would not break into the mainstream until much later. Coal just could not beat out natural gas and oil, though, and in the 1950s most places left it behind, though just a decade before it still saw some love. While there was never really anything too harmful about a coal stove as compared to some others on the list, they were always at a higher risk of fire accidents and had bad fumes like carbon monoxide. When progress came knocking, people saw that alternatives had a lot more benefits. Let me paint you a picture, literally. You walk into the bathroom and there it is, a metal trash can, hand-painted with flowers, maybe strawberries, maybe tiny little bluebirds. Toll painting, they called it. A fancy name for what was basically folk art with heart. These trash cans were not hidden away. They were proudly placed beside vanities or near the toilet, like a small sign that even the most forgettable corners of the home deserved beauty. The base was usually tin or aluminum, light enough to dent, strong enough to last through the years. You would see them in pastel colors, matched to the wallpaper or the rug, sometimes even forming part of a coordinated bathroom set with matching tissue holders and soap dishes. And they were always clean, almost suspiciously so, because throwing something into a painted trash can somehow felt like you were doing something rude. They were never just containers, they were art. And that idea of dressing up the ordinary, that spilled into everything. Even the spare toilet paper roll needed to look its best. And that is when something truly unforgettable showed up, something that turned necessity into nostalgia with a smile and a little yarn wig. Of all the decisions the 1980s made about interior design, putting wall-to-wall carpet in the bathroom was the one that aged the worst. Soft and warm underfoot, and absolutely incapable of handling the one thing a bathroom produces in abundance: moisture. The carpet surrounded the toilet, crept up to the base of the shower, and in the most committed households ran right to the edge of the bathtub. Spills soaked in. Steam settled. The padding underneath became a breeding ground for mold you could not see but could eventually smell, a damp sweetness that no air freshener could mask. Cleaning meant dragging a vacuum into the bathroom regularly, which felt less like housekeeping and more like admitting defeat. The color choices made it worse: seafoam green, peach, powder blue, or mauve that showed every water stain. Tile existed. Linoleum existed. The entire history of waterproof flooring was available, and the 80s looked at all of it and chose carpet. Coffee cans as kitchen canisters were a sign that nothing went to waste. Once the last scoop of grounds was brewed, that metal can had a second life. Families rinsed them out and immediately put them to use holding flour, sugar, or rice. Some cans were decorated with labels taped to the side, others just had a scribble with a marker. The smell of coffee often lingered no matter how many times they were washed, so biscuits baked with flour from a coffee can sometimes carried a hint of the morning pot. They were sturdy, stackable, and could survive years of heavy use in a busy kitchen. Kids also discovered them outside the kitchen, filled with nails, screws, or crayons when parents needed cheap storage. A line of colorful coffee cans on a pantry shelf was both a symbol of poverty and a badge of ingenuity, proving nothing useful was ever discarded. Families saw them as too valuable to throw away, and they became one of the most common sights in working-class kitchens. Simple, strong, and endlessly reusable, coffee cans held more than food. They held the spirit of making do with what you had. Formaldehyde foam insulation was marketed as the miracle shortcut for any homeowner who wanted a warm house without spending a fortune, and countless families in the 1970s eagerly embraced it. Contractors filled walls with this airy white foam that expanded quickly, hardened fast, and seemed like a modern solution to drafty living rooms. For a brief moment, it felt like every neighborhood was upgrading at once, sealing up their homes with what was promised to be the future of budget-friendly insulation. But soon, the complaints started rolling in, and they were not mild ones. People began waking up with burning eyes, aching lungs, raw throats, and an unshakable chemical smell that clung to every room in the house. Children developed chronic coughs, pets fell sick, and entire families wondered why their homes suddenly felt hostile instead of safe. Investigators eventually discovered that this foam released dangerous formaldehyde fumes that built up inside sealed houses, especially in the winter months when windows stayed shut. The government banned it once the evidence became undeniable, but thousands were left with walls that continued to off-gas for years. What started as a cheap improvement became one of the most regretted home upgrades of the decade, a reminder that not every shortcut is worth taking. Cornflower blue. Corningware dishes were more than cookware. They were a symbol of trust. Every mother, grandmother, and aunt had a stack of them, their glossy white bodies stamped with that delicate blue flower pattern. You could bake, freeze, or microwave them, and somehow they would always survive. Each dish was passed from oven to table like a badge of care, the kind of thing that stayed warm long after the meal was gone. Even when one was chipped or stained, no one dared throw it away. It had history baked into its surface. They sat on stovetops and holiday tables for decades, carrying everything from tuna casseroles to Sunday roasts. Each one bore tiny scratches and faded spots that told stories only family could recognize. These dishes didn't chip, crack, or fade, no matter how many family reunions or church potlucks they endured. They were indestructible in a way that felt comforting, reliable like the women who used them. Every casserole that came out of those dishes carried more than food, it carried a family's story. Today, people hunt for them in thrift stores, trying to touch a piece of that everyday magic. The simple blue flowers became a kind of heirloom, quietly reminding us that some things were built to last. Lead-painted wooden Venetian blinds hung in bedroom windows and living room bays throughout the 1980s. Elegant fixtures nobody questioned or worried about. Families tilted the slats to let morning light in or shut them tight against afternoon sun, never realizing every tug of the cord released toxic dust into the air. The lead in the paint made finishes durable and resistant to chipping, which manufacturers advertised as a selling point for busy households. Children pressed their faces against the slats to peek outside, running fingers along painted surfaces while parents called them to dinner. Over time, the paint degraded invisibly, shedding particles onto windowsills, carpets, and the hands of everyone who touched them. Researchers eventually connected these blinds to alarming blood lead levels in children, prompting urgent recalls and immediate regulatory action. Families were stunned to learn something so ordinary had been contaminating their homes for years. The bans arrived swiftly, once evidence mounted, forcing manufacturers to reformulate and homeowners to replace what they had trusted. Today, those vintage blinds serve as a quiet reminder that danger sometimes hangs in plain sight. Every time you turned on the kitchen faucet in a 1980s home, the water passed through copper pipes joined together with lead-based solder. It was cheap, easy to work with, and had been standard in American plumbing for decades. It was also dissolving into the drinking water. Lead solder released the highest concentrations when water sat still overnight, meaning the first glass poured each morning carried the heaviest dose. The EPA estimated that drinking water accounted for roughly 20% of total lead exposure in young kids during this period. The Safe Drinking Water Act amendments of 1986 finally prohibited lead solder in plumbing connected to public water supplies, but millions of homes built before that date still had it running through every wall. No recall was issued. No one came to replace the pipes. If your house was built before 1986, the solder is likely still there. In the 1970s, a bright coat of paint was seen as the quickest way to freshen up a home. The walls glistened with color, the nursery looked cheerful, and even wooden toys were coated in glossy perfection. What no one realized was that beauty came with a cost, a quiet, invisible danger hiding in plain sight. Lead-based paint was everywhere, from cribs to kitchen walls, sold as durable and easy to clean. Families trusted it, unaware that each chip and flake released toxic dust that lingered in the air and settled on everything. Children, drawn to the bright colors, often ingested it without anyone knowing. By the time doctors began connecting developmental problems to lead exposure, millions of homes were already covered in the stuff. It took decades for regulations to catch up, and even then, the damage was done. This was the kind of danger that did not explode or burn. It simply stayed, poisoning quietly. Looking back now, it is haunting how something so ordinary became one of the most dangerous household hazards of its time. In the 1970s, having a built-in wet bar was a sign that you had made it. It meant you were a host, a social connector, someone who knew how to entertain with style. The mirrored backsplash, the chrome railing, the smoked glass shelves lined with liquor bottles. This was sophistication, suburban edition. But the reality rarely lived up to the fantasy. These bars were often shoved into corners of the basement, barely used except during holidays or awkward neighborhood gatherings. They collected dust, the plumbing rarely worked right, and the built-in mini fridges started leaking after a few years. Not to mention, America's relationship with alcohol shifted drastically in the decades that followed. The cocktail party scene began to fade. Suddenly, having a fully stocked alcohol station in your house felt less glamorous and more like a relic from your uncle's disco phase. What was meant to impress became an eyesore, especially when surrounded by orange carpeting and faux leather stools. So many of these bars were either ripped out entirely or turned into storage for board games and wrapping paper, but at least they were not a physical hazard. The next luxury home upgrade? Plant shelves and hanging spider plants were the unofficial mascots of 1970s home decor. Every home seemed to have at least one tall plant stand in the corner or a high shelf lined with greenery, creating a mini indoor jungle. Spider plants, with their long arching leaves and little offshoot babies, were especially popular because they thrived with minimal care. They dangled from macrame hangers in front of windows, their pots often wrapped in colorful yarn or ceramic glaze. The sunlight streaming through the leaves made the space feel alive, like nature had been invited indoors to stay. Sometimes these plants were paired with trailing ivy or ferns, creating layers of greenery that almost became part of the architecture. In open living spaces, plant shelves acted as soft dividers, separating areas while keeping everything airy and light. Guests would admire the lush displays, and hosts would take pride in their green thumb, even if the plants were actually watered by a forgetful teenager once a week. It was a style that blurred the lines between inside and outside, fitting perfectly with the era's love for organic textures and natural shapes. Copper arsenate wood preservative, known as CCA lumber, was the backbone of outdoor building throughout the 1970s, used for fences, decks, and playground structures with complete confidence. What made it remarkable was its longevity, because treated wood resisted rot, termites, and weathering for 40 years or more, far outlasting any untreated timber. Scientists still acknowledge CCA treatment as one of the most effective preservation methods ever developed, solving a real problem for homeowners tired of replacing decayed lumber every few seasons. Families trusted the distinctive green-tinted boards because they delivered durability that seemed permanent. But the protection came from real arsenic, a heavy metal that leached steadily into surrounding soil as the wood aged. Rain washed it deeper, children played on treated surfaces, and pets wandered through yards where contamination spread invisibly. Researchers documented the risks clearly enough for regulators to ban CCA from residential use entirely. Safer alternatives exist, but none match the extraordinary lifespan of the original treatment. It remains one of the clearest examples where the most effective solution was also the most dangerous. Portable heaters without tip-over switches warmed bedrooms, living rooms, and basement workshops throughout the 1970s, glowing quietly in corners while families went about their evening routines. People positioned them near beds, couches, and curtains without a second thought, trusting the warmth they provided during long winter nights. The heaters were simple and affordable, exactly what families needed when central heating fell short or energy bills climbed too high. But these early models had no safety mechanism to shut off if they tipped over or got too close to something flammable. A bump from a child, a curious pet, or even a gust from an open door could send the heater tumbling onto carpet or fabric. Within minutes, flames could spread through a room before anyone smelled smoke. Fire investigators traced countless house fires back to these unprotected heaters, documenting tragedies that happened while families slept. When regulators finally required tip-over switches and overheat protection, the older models were pulled from stores and marked as hazards. Families who had relied on them for years were stunned to learn how close they had come to disaster every single night. Gasoline ration stamp books were small, fragile, and powerful. They decided how far you could travel, how much you could work, and even how often you could visit loved ones. Each booklet bore the official stamp of the government and your car's license number, proof that your family had earned its right to fuel. Americans quickly learned to plan every trip down to the mile, sharing rides or leaving their cars parked for weeks. For families in rural towns, the ration book could feel like both a lifeline and a leash, freedom wrapped in paper. People learned to combine errands, walk to work, or rely on bicycles to stretch their stamps a little further. Weekend drives disappeared, replaced by carpool conversations about sacrifice and pride. For many, it became a symbol of duty. The less you drove, the more you helped the soldiers overseas. Gasoline was as precious as gold, and every drop was counted. Some families traded stamps quietly among neighbors, risking fines for just a few more gallons. The stamp books grew soft with use, their pages marked by oil-stained fingers and careful hands. In the end, they told stories of restraint and cooperation that few generations since have had to understand. Unvented gas appliances were an extremely common culprit behind carbon monoxide-related gas accidents in the United States. We spoke about this carbon monoxide poisoning before, but it is probably best to stress again how much ventilation was ignored in homemaking and architecture decades back. Do not get us wrong, the ventilation was there, but never as a primary aspect that builders should prioritize and be extra cautious of. Most people thought that as long as some air could pass through, you were okay. Unvented gas appliances definitely proved ideas like that wrong with how much they contributed to carbon monoxide-related emergency trips and hospitalizations. Milk glass. You have seen it before, even if you did not know what it was called. That soft, semi-opaque white glass with little raised designs and a porcelain feel. It was everywhere. On top of dressers, in kitchen hutches, on coffee tables full of hard candies that stuck together by the time you reached in. Some people used them for flower vases. Others just liked how they looked. They came in the shapes of hens, goblets, tiny baskets, or even elaborate bowls with scalloped edges. It was not flashy. That was the beauty of it. Milk glass was humble elegance, just enough to brighten up a room without trying too hard. And it was passed down, from mothers to daughters, from grandmothers to newlyweds. It was not expensive, but it felt like treasure. You knew you had to be careful with it. It could chip if you were not gentle. So, you learned to be gentle. You learned that home meant taking care of the little things. And sometimes, right next to that candy dish or sitting under a vase of plastic carnations, there was something even more sacred. 60 items. Every single one of them sat in a drawer, a cabinet, or on a countertop in somebody's house, collecting dust and confusing guests. The strangest part is how many of them you probably owned yourself without ever questioning why. If one of these brought back a memory you had completely forgotten about, drop it in the comments. And if you want more of this, hit subscribe so you do not miss the next one.